understand your role and the role of the Intelligence Committee in that process. I must conclude that the White House used your talking points to perpetrate its own misguided political agenda. I believe that the White House wanted America to believe Al-Qaeda to be on the run. And thus, they needed the attacks to be in response to an anti-Islamic video, and so the White House used your talking points to say so. But we knew that Al-Qaeda and other affiliated terrorist organizations and militia groups participated in the attacks. Officers on the ground knew that there was no protest. If the American people had known that those officers knew, if the administration told them the truth, the public would now know that these terrorists were to blame. The public would better understand the threat we are facing today. And
have the expert.
There are several issues. You look at General Colin Powell, who went to the United Nations and was relying on information received from the community and about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and relied. Same thing with Susan Rice. She relied on what information you gave at the time, and then she went through a tough time when she was really responding to what information she got. So there are a lot of lessons to learn here.
Yes, sir.
Go back.
Always value the ability to communicate directly with Congress in general and with this committee in particular. And yet, as the chairman mentioned in his opening statement, you were sitting at the table along with the other intelligence officials when we were trying to find out who changed the talking points, what happened with those talking points. I don't think anyone on the committee had the faintest idea that you had anything to do with those talking points. And to me, and it wasn't until 6 months later, after all of questions being asked, after this inquiry going on as to who changed the talking points, 6 months later when the White House released the emails, we found out how directly involved you were. And quite frankly, I have to say that that was, at best, it's misleading by omission what you did that day and continue to do afterwards, or at worst, lying by omission. Because we trusted you, and you did have a relationship with the committee, and by not being forthcoming, I think you violate your obligation to this committee and to the Congress. Let me go on to several other things. You dismissed the email from the station chief in Benghazi. Now, we can't go into the details of that, as it was an email. I have a very different interpretation of it from yours. You and Congressman Schiff made reference to signals intelligence. If we know what the station chief felt, why he believed that that should not be significant, he's the guy on the ground. He's the one who's closest to it. And I think for you to bring up the issue of signals intelligence today, when those who are familiar, I believe familiar with the full context of that, know why it should not be taken seriously, is again misleading here today. You said that there's no politics and there was no changes done for political reasons. Yet, when we look at Victoria Nuland, she says she has serious concerns, this is on the talking points, about arming members of Congress to start making assertions to the media that could be abused by members to beat the State Department for not paying attention to agency warnings. That's clearly a concern by the State Department about their reputation. We have we also have, for instance, Tommy Vita in a memo to Ben Rhodes, among others. There's massive disinformation out there, particularly in Congress. This is a response not only to a tasking from the House Intelligence Committee, but also guidance that we need to brief members, press, and correct the record. So clearly the administration wanted to use this for political purposes, or at least to frame their nature of the debate. And then Victoria Nuland, finally, I guess she says that this doesn't resolve all my issues, or as Mr. Conway mentioned, those of my building leadership. And the question is, who is the leadership? Who's she talking about? Is she talking about the 7th floor, and who on the 7th floor? Then we go to the email from General Petraeus, where you quoted General Petraeus at the very end. And I've never known anyone who was a leader in of any department or agency who was more controlling than General Petraeus. And yet, he says, frankly, I just not to use these. He seems so passive. This is certainly not what Vice Chairman Rufusberger was hoping to get. And why was General Petraeus so passive? Why was he sitting back the way he was? It goes against everything that I saw in any of his testimony before our committee. Then you accompanied Susan Rice to see Senator Graham, Senator Ayotte, and Senator McCain, and the question came up about the FBI, and then you said the FBI, or you brought up the FBI changed the talking points, and later that day, that had to be changed. And then, and I know you went into this, Mr. Conaway, but after you leave the government, you go to a firm, Beacon Global, which has as one of its principals a person who was in the leadership at the State Department. One of those people Victoria Nuland seems to be worried about. And then you go to CBS News, and the brother Ben Rhodes, who was very concerned, I believe his his brother is the director of CBS News. Now, you can smile, you can say this is all conspiracies, and isolated by themselves, I might agree with you. When you see the whole totality here, this is why people have questions. So I would ask you questions, and you can answer whatever else you want to. At what time were you told that General Petraeus was under investigation? Were you aware of it on the day that the talking points were being prepared?
I don't remember the timing of my awareness of that investigation.
Well, that's pretty significant. I mean, here's the director of the CIA. You're the number 2 man. He's under investigation, possibly for criminal charges. And it would seem to me that you should have been told about that immediately by the White House or somebody in the administration in the event you had to take over on a moment's notice. I mean, that's pretty significant. And also, how did that influence his decision on the talking points?
I did not know anything about what was going on with General Petraeus until the day before he resigned.
So no one told you anything? Nobody, John
No.
Brennan ever said anything to you? Nobody in the White House ever said anything to you at all?
No.
You had no knowledge of it whatsoever?
No, sir.
Okay. When you accompanied Susan Rice to Senator McCain, Senator Ayotte, and also to Senator Graham, is it customary for CIA officials to accompany a presidential nominee?
So I was asked to go.
Is it customary for that to be done?
It was an ad hoc thing. I mean, this doesn't happen every day where she was not a presidential nominee. She had not been
Well,
nominated
she was
yet.
mentioned as,
She had not,
politically she was mentioned to be
she had not been nominated yet.
That's
right?
why she was meeting with the Senate.
She was going up there to try to explain why she said what she said on the Sunday shows. I was asked to go with her.
Who asked you?
The White House.
Who was the White House? Who was the
Dennis
White
McDonough. I was asked to go to explain one thing, and one thing only: the consistency between the talking points about the attack evolving from a protest. I was asked to talk about the consistency between the talking points and the classified analysis. That's why I was asked to go. That's what I did.
And yet, the main question you were asked about the FBI, you got wrong. Or the information you volunteered, you got wrong.
Yes, sir, I got it wrong.
That was 2 months after the talking points. You were going up there with Susan Rice to brief these senators on what happened. And on the key fact, you were wrong, and you had to correct it within 5 hours.
I was asked a question: who took Al Qaeda out of the talking points? And I got it wrong. I said the FBI, when in fact the CIA was the one to take it out of the talking points. So I got it mixed up, and I corrected the record as soon as I found out. They call the FBI, and the FBI protested very vigorously. So nobody from the FBI ever called me to complain.
They called anybody in the CIA?
They called nobody at the CIA. And I just checked this, Congressman. They called nobody at the CIA. I corrected the record long before I knew that the FBI was upset. In fact, I did not know the FBI was upset until a couple of months ago.
Why didn't you check with the... I mean, how come you checked it? I mean, you had 2 months to prepare, and you notice how come suddenly within 4 hours you decided you had to check what the FBI did?
So, Congressman, what happened was I was asked a question. I made a mistake. I got in the car to go back to Langley. My head of congressional affairs, who was with me in the meeting, said, "Michael, I think you got that wrong." And I said, "Well, let's go find out, and if I did, let's correct the record." And so when we got back to headquarters, we had a little meeting in my office where I found out that I was indeed wrong, and I told my head of congressional affairs to correct the record. And within 2 or 3 hours, he had done so. Not within 24, as some people have said, and I didn't wait until I heard that the FBI was upset before I corrected the record. I corrected the record as soon as I found out. How many people in this town do that?
I would just say we have to believe an awful lot of circumstances in this entire totality to accept your version. I find it difficult to do. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Morrell, can you speculate, or how do you feel the reasons why we have not been able to bring the perpetrators to justice?
Congressman, it's a very good question. It has been 8 months since I left my job as deputy director. So I have no idea what the status of the investigation is. I have no idea what the status of CIA support to that investigation is. So I really can't speculate on where things stand. It is really a question for the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Well, to my colleagues on the other side who think this is some kind of a witch hunt, the reason we're pressing is because we don't have retribution. We have an ambassador and American heroes who were killed, who were brutally murdered, and we're getting bureaucratic, whatever you want to call it, about why nobody can take responsibility. We talked to the FBI and they've got one version, and I know this isn't the CIA's job, but to anyone who wants to know why this isn't going away, that's the reason it's not going away. I want to see them brought to justice. I want retribution. I would pull the switch if I could. This is outrageous. That's why the American people are upset. That's why this committee is not going to let it go. And that's why most of the American people, I get this question more and more and more. And we get on talking points and we get about who said this and what the station chief said that. And the bottom line is that we've got people running around who killed Americans, who are sipping Mai Tais or whatever they're sipping, and we can't do anything about it. And that's why I don't think we should let it go. I don't think why the American people should let it go, and especially for the memory of those heroes and for everyone else in the CIA. Mr. Morell, you know, you've been there for so many years. You've seen brave men and women put their lives in harm's way time and time again. Is this what we want to send the message to the rest of those people who are out there on the front lines? That all this time can go by and the United States of America can't bring these thugs to justice? I just think it's wrong, and I apologize, and I yield back.
Mr. Congressman, I agree with you 100%. There is nobody who wants to bring these guys to justice more than me, and you know why.
I know that, and I appreciate it. But the problem we've got is that we can't get anybody in this great United States of America, in this government, with all the resources we have to bear. We get all kinds of stories about why this can't happen. Now, if it was a month later, if it was 2 months later, we might say, okay, there might be some reasons why. But this is a long time. This is a long time. And I think we send a message to anyone else who wants to pull this kind of a stunt that, you know, maybe the United States isn't so serious about all this. And I don't blame this on you, but for anyone who's wondering why this is going on, this is why it's going on, and this is why it should never be let go until we get to the bottom of it.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?